From beach towels to tea towels, and from mugs to water bottles, the TNT shop has it all. Browse our shop now at tntradio.live. Using science to debunk myths, from the pandemic to climate fraud. Thanks for listening to Sky Dragon Slaying on TNT Radio.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Sky Dragon Slaying. We bring you the truth on science and current affairs the mainstream would rather you didn't know. I'm John O'Sullivan, CEO of Principia Scientific International. As usual, joining me is Canadian astrophysicist Joe Postma. In this hour, we're talking Bitcoin. The big financial news this past week is Bitcoin just keeps on rising. The Economist magazine reported on March the 5th the cryptocurrency is already up by 63% this year. It's currently trading an all-time high of just above $69,000. This is all music to the ears of our latest guest, down in Portugal, Chris Almida, an expert in Bitcoin investment. Chris, you must be enjoying this.
To talk about with Bitcoin right now. Bitcoin's eating the world. It's slaying dragons. So it's a really exciting time. With the bull market for Bitcoin reaching its all-time high, 70,190 yesterday US dollar, for the first time ever ahead of the halving. This has never happened in a previous cycle. So yeah, it's a very exciting time from the number go up price perspective, but it's exciting for lots of different reasons. I'd love to jump into those as we talk today.
Yeah. One of the things I mentioned to you on a previous episode, I think it's the third time you've been on our show, is I'm, planning like a lot of people with the option of being a digital nomad, going out there, going where the cost of living is cheaper. We just heard on the news about the issue in the Philippines, Far East. It's a topsy-turvy world, and it seems like Bitcoin might be a secure haven for your money. You tend to agree with that, don't you?
Absolutely. I mean, if you think about it, for the last 5,000 years, gold has really been the ultimate form of hard money. That's where people would put their savings in. But of course, gold has a lot of drawbacks, which, mostly its portability. It's hard to move gold across borders. It's heavy. It's hard to take to a lot of places. Very difficult to travel with. Of course, it's also hard to break up. It's not very divisible when you have it in a bar. So we created fiat money to get around a lot of those issues, but Bitcoin solves all of those problems in a much more elegant fashion. It has all the virtues of money: its portability, its neutralness, its censorship resistance, its fungibility, its divisibility. The 21 million Bitcoin supply, which is finite, can be divided into 100 million Satoshis per Bitcoin, and even another 100 million, million micro Satoshis from there. So it's very, very, very divisible. And if you are in one country and you want to move to another country, your Bitcoin it's on the internet. So you can access it from either place. And all you have to have is your seed phrase, which you could potentially memorize 12 words in your head. You could walk across the border naked and still have your millions of Bitcoin with you in your pocket, so to speak.
Yeah, one of the things I want to pick up on as well with you is the fact that, talking to other people who are thinking about the digital nomad lifestyle, that they're saying, like in the Far East, it's very hard to get a bank account. A lot of these nations, they're not too keen on the passport bros going down there. They're saying use Western Union, that kind of thing, but never put all your eggs in one basket, Chris. And Bitcoin seems to be like another option for people considering going out exploring distant lands.
Yes, absolutely. Remittances is certainly a use case of Bitcoin for people to be able to send money to folks in other countries, and it does so in a much more elegant way because it's permissionless and it's trustless. So if you want to use Western Union, get prepared for a lot of hassle. You're going to have to go down to the office. You're going to have to take your cash. You're going to have to try to explain where that cash came from if it's over a certain amount. And you basically have to get permission to send your money, your cash, the money that you own, to send it and do whatever you want with it, which of course is a ridiculous way to treat other human beings, right? Especially today. Today is the Cypherpunk Manifesto Day that happened in 1993, which is really the beginning of celebrating and enshrining our rights to use cryptography and to keep to be private, to have private transactions. And Bitcoin is a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. That's the first sentence in the white paper. So Bitcoin does allow you to send. Yes, it could take 10 minutes for the confirmation to occur, but you can literally, without permission, without any third party, without any intermediary, regardless of where you are, as long as you can access the internet, if you have 1,000,000 Bitcoin and you want to send 1,000,000 Bitcoin to whomever you wish, you can do so. And there's nothing stopping for you. And the fee is actually quite reasonable. It's really based upon the size of the data. It has nothing to do with the amount. So if it's just a fee where you're sending data and the fees are low, it could be, $1, 50 cents to send 1,000,000.
Yeah, a lot of the travel experts are saying if you're going traveling on the Far East, you want to make sure you be very wary of these bank charges. The ATM machines, they rack up the surcharges. Be very, very wary. 5% is not uncommon. 5% fee on transactions, and again, it's very worrying. So, for those people who are interested in maybe going to Bitcoin as an alternative, what could be the surcharge for them?
Well, the charges for sending Bitcoin on chain, so that's meaning actually using the Bitcoin time chain to send Bitcoin from one address to another, vary based upon demand. So if the demand is very high and the traffic is very high, and you want to get that transaction confirmed within that kind of 10 to 12-minute time period, 10 minutes is the average block confirmation time, and that's we can talk about time chain and why that was architected and how that's engineered in a little more detail, because it's pretty interesting actually. But again, it really depends on traffic. So it could be, as I said, could be very low. You could pay on $100, you might pay $1. And it could be very high. There are times when the volumes and the traffic is very high, and maybe you would pay $10 or $20 to send that transaction, which wouldn't make a lot of sense, right? That would seem unreasonable for a small amount like that. Of course, we have scaling solutions for the Bitcoin network, like the Lightning Network, which is something that sits what's called a layer 2. It sits on top of Bitcoin, and it allows you to send smaller amounts. There are limits, but technically it could be up to one Bitcoin or even 100 Bitcoin that you could send via the Lightning Network, and that those transactions happen almost instantaneously, and the fees are very, very, very low, lower than anything you could get anywhere. So we're talking cents or parts of a cent. In fact, today, please don't let me forget, in the last segment of our conversation, I want to send you guys some sats via the Lightning Network. I sent you before on a previous show some apps for you to download. Hopefully you still have those on your phone, and we'll show everybody exactly how fast and how easy it is to do that.
Yeah, Joe Postman, have you got your phone there? Are you ready?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, actually, I was looking at my apps and I actually deleted the one. I forgot we were having you
Oh, no.
on last night, or well, I didn't forget. I just thought I'm not sure if we're going to do that anymore. But I could. It's really easy. Yeah, I could get that app, no problem. It was called
Yeah.
Breeze or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's Breeze, Breez. Download the Breeze app, fire that up. It'll only take a few minutes, and when you're ready, whenever within the show, we'll jump on there and I'll send you some sats.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Yeah,
So, Chris,
we're gonna. Yeah, I just want
no,
to
go
pick
ahead,
up.
mate.
I mean, I was reading the history of, you mentioned Satoshi. Satoshi was the guy, the so-called founder of the whole concept. He wrote a white paper, about the possibilities of BitChain. And the important thing is the key to key encryption, the idea that at both ends, encryption is everything, isn't it? Without encryption, you've got no security. And it's a way of avoiding, preventing governments and third parties from actually interceding your transactions. It's a wonderful solution to the big threat now of bank bail-ins. I've been hearing, for the last year or two, the possibility that with the proposed collapse of the banking systems, we may be finding these banks are raiding our bank accounts willy-nilly just to bail themselves out. They can't do that with Bitcoin, can they, Chris?
No, they can't. I mean, well, they can if you don't hold your Bitcoin in the way that it is intended to be held. So if you hold your Bitcoin on a third-party exchange, let's say Binance, let's say Kraken, let's say Coinbase, you don't actually hold the keys to your wallet. They hold the keys. And that's called custodial Bitcoin, right? So you're using a third party to take custody and allow you to do transactions in an easy way without you having to understand much. Maybe you bought into the perception or the idea that it's too difficult to take custody of yourself and operate your own wallet. And that's not true, by the way. It's really not that difficult for anyone who has used an app and done something on the internet before. It does take you to a little bit of time to understand how to do it, but it's not that difficult using something like
Yeah.
Sparrow Wallet or one of the hardware keys. And it is cryptography which really underpins that ability to do something without a third party, where you hold the private key and you use a public key, and that's really what cryptography is all about, so that you can either send messages or send data, or in this case, send cash from one address to another. So that is an integral part of Bitcoin. The other integral part of Bitcoin, there are several, of course, is proof of work, which proof of work is the mechanism on how transactions are actually confirmed, and that's done by miners and validators. Solving that cryptographic, making that guess to try and get the number that actually completes the block and makes the confirmation. Sorry, I don't know if there was a break. I missed the chat. Little bubble popping up there. I didn't want to overrun.
Yeah, we're going to take a little bit of a technical issue with the sound, but we're going to fix it for you now in a moment. We're going to take a short break. This is TNT Radio.
TNT's Tyler Nixon.
His entrance brings a totally different energy, and which I really am a fan. Frankly, I've become a fan, even as a Republican named Nixon, of the Kennedys, or of the original Kennedys. The Kennedys of today, since basically Ted Kennedy onward, other than Bobby Jr., I have no use for. And this is reflected in how they have gone after him in vicious ways, in my opinion, for family members. That old man Joe and Honey Fitz, and frankly, Jack and Bobby would have been thought appalling, because they were nothing if not loyal to their family and to that clan. And but he is in my opinion one of the a super intellect, a super fine in every way individual, a gentleman, a true public servant, a humble person. He's a devout man.
Tyler Nixon on today's News Talk, TNT.
Right now, the forgotten poor are waiting for healing and care, for life-saving medical care, for a chance to live with dignity and hope. They are waiting for Mercy Ships and you. Mercy Ships is the largest floating civilian hospital in the world, with volunteer medical staff and crew who donate their time to save lives. And now, as our newest state-of-the-art hospital ship sets sail, Mercy Ships will double our ability to reach children and adults who need us now.
Without the work of Mercy Ships, these patients don't have another option.
Mercy Ships is answering the call to serve suffering people who have nowhere else to turn. Together, we are going to some of the world's most desperate places and bringing a wave of hope and healing to those who need it most. To learn more about this wave of hope, go to mercyships.org today.
The human mind is like a computer. No matter how efficient it may be, its reliability is only as great as the information fed into it.
That's a campaign promise. Tell us the truth. Tell us the truth.
We mandate that the truth be told.
You're hearing it.
TNT.
Hi, welcome back. Before the break, Bitcoin specialist Chris Almida was going to do a little experiment for us live on air. Chris, you're going to do a Bitcoin transaction in real time during the show. Joe's there already. He's got his smartphone already and waiting for you. So away you go, Chris. You take the lead from here.
All right, let's do it. Joe, do you have the app on your phone loaded up?
I do. Yep, right here. Yep.
Okay, great. So what you're going to do is you're going to click on the receive button. There's at the bottom there, you'll see receive.
Yeah.
And I want you're going to click receive via invoice.
Okay.
And I want you to type in 1,458.
Okay. For sats, 1,458 satoshis. Sats, yeah.
Yep. Because that's the equivalent to $1 US right now.
Okay, perfect. Yeah.
You're going to click that in, and that should, after you click that in, that should pump up a QR code. Is that right?
Yeah, it actually says it needs a minimum of 2,500 sats. So that's going to be.
Oh, that's right. It's the first time we're using Breeze. You're going to get some extra sats out of me. Wow, that's great. Okay, so type in 2,500 sats.
Nice.
Yeah, so Breeze is a non-custodial Lightning wallet. It actually opens up a Lightning channel for you right there on your phone and provides the initial liquidity. And the first transaction, you have to do a little bit bigger size so they can recuperate some of that cost for opening that Lightning channel on your behalf, which is fair because they're doing that for you and you still have access to your keys. All right.
Okay, so I got a QR code.
Let's get on Joe. Hold up that QR code to the camera so I can see it.
Okay. Hopefully it comes through.
Yeah.
Hopefully I can read that. It's a bit low resolution.
Yeah, the QR code is on the screen. Yeah, it's getting there. A little bit more focus, and we're nearly there.
I lost you on the main camera. How do I pin? We have to navigate the. Okay, I'm gonna pin you. All right, back it up just a little bit, Joe. There you go. That should be good. Hold on, hold it steady. Come on, technology. We can do this over the internet.
Yeah, this is real time, by the way. Real time. No pressure.
Yeah, I know. Well, I think the camera's your camera is a little bit too fuzzy.
My camera's a bit low resolution. Yeah, sorry guys.
That's okay. We're not going to be defeated. What we're going to do,
typically you don't do it like this. Like what I could do is you can obviously send a link because I can copy a text link for that QR code.
Yeah, just copy the text into the chat here on the what's on our Zoom, and I will then take that off, throw that on my phone. As soon as it's there, you'll be able to show it up to the screen that they got received. Right?
Just for clarification, Chris, just for clarification, we don't need to be on the camera to do this, do we? The QR code on the camera thing, it's just for demonstration purposes. In a real transaction, you wouldn't be doing it like this at all. You're just demonstrating it for the viewers, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. So the QR code would come up. We'd be, if you're at the coffee shop, you want to buy. So I was at Bitcoin Atlantis, as a matter of fact, this last week, which the tiny autonomous region of Madeira, which is a part of Portugal, a little island in the middle of the Atlantic, held one of the biggest conferences in Bitcoin so far this year, with all the biggest names, 5,000 participants from all over the world. And every transaction was done using the Lightning Network. So when you went to buy your coffee, when you went to buy your sandwich, anything that you wanted to buy, you were able to do that using Lightning, and it happened instantly. And so they would hold up their point of sale, just like you would with Visa, and it would have that little QR code on there, and you would whip out your phone with your favorite Lightning Network app, or you would use the little Bolt card that they provided, which used NFC, and you would scan in that QR code. And thank you for that link. I'm going to do that in just a second because it's hard for me to do it while I'm talking. But then you would instantly pay for your coffee, and it happened instantly. And right there, brilliant. The queue never was disrupted, just as fast as any other transaction mechanism. So Lightning works that way.
You literally are in a coffee shop, chilling out, maybe talking to your friends, working on your laptop or talking on your smartphone, and the transaction's done right there internationally. Right, you're there in Portugal. Joe's up there in Canada, in Calgary. So again, it's going around the world. It's really in real time now. I can see that you're fiddling there on your phone, Chris. You're getting that data fed in.
Give me 1 second. I'm copying it right now, and I'm gonna send. Send approve. Says processing payment. Go ahead and look at your app, Joe.
Nice. All right.
And it's processing the payment right now. And payment was successfully sent. And you should see now a balance.
I got it right there. Yeah.
All right. Nice. And if you can hold that up just to show some people that you got that received. And that's how fast and how quick.
That's just showing the receipt there. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah, transaction approved and sent. Must be about 4,000 miles international transaction in literally real time. Took a minute or two. Chris, you've proved the technology. The little glitch with the QR code on the camera. Again, that was just for our purposes, just to demonstrate on video. That's not part of the process normally. But again, you've shown people how easy it is now. The technology is advancing all the time. And you mentioned the conference. You just got back from the conference. I'm guessing that 5,000 people there were very, very upbeat about the situation right now.
Yeah, well, it's a very interesting thing, right? Bitcoin has a culture around it, of course, because Bitcoin has a lot of principles of sovereignty and freedom, and that's really what attracts people, right? I mean, you wouldn't see people going to a US dollar conference, spirits, right? That, that people aren't just excited, that's really utility. Is completely different, but we people who have gotten into Bitcoin, people who have seen it early, and we are really, really, really early, still very early in the adoption of Bitcoin. They're really attracted to this ideas of trustless, of permissionless, of borderless, all the aspects that really allow people to transact in freedom. Bitcoin is public financial infrastructure, not controlled by any government, and that's very appealing to people. So yeah, when you're there with 5,000 other people who are enthusiasts about Bitcoin, it can be pretty exciting. The crowd is pretty amped up. It was held in an open air stadium on the beautiful island of Madeira, which is semi-tropical, and the sun was shining, and palm trees and breeze and all that kind of stuff. So it was a great time, and it coincided with, as I said earlier, Bitcoin reaching its all-time high for the first time in any previous epoch. And an epoch is a period of time. It's about 210,000 blocks that are per epoch, which ends in a halving. And we're just about to enter that time ourselves right now. So we're about to go from the fourth epoch to the fifth epoch with the halving about to occur on April 20th of this year. So pretty excited about that. And the supply of Bitcoin will be cut in half as part of that halving. And that's really what happens.
Yeah, when I looked into the history of the Bitcoin movement, I looked at the first transaction. I think it was about 2009 at the time, but quite a while ago now. And I think the first transaction was to buy a pizza. And I think it was several thousand Bitcoins were used in that transaction for like a $25 pizza or something. And insanely, Chris, that transaction now with that value of Bitcoins is $500 million. That's how much Bitcoin's gone up. It's insane, isn't it?
It is absolutely astronomically insane, really. If you could go back in time, I'm sure he would rather have the Bitcoin than the pizza today. That guy, I think I've seen comments from him like, "Oh my gosh, what did I do?" To that effect, or "Don't you wish?" It's celebrated every year in Bitcoin culture. Bitcoin Pizza Day. It's become a big meme, a big part of Bitcoin. It is very interesting. But yes, Bitcoin. I think. There's a chart that we see in Bitcoin all the time. That's the logarithmic chart of Bitcoin's price from 2009 to today. And if you look at that chart, and this is the only asset that exists today that actually has a chart like this, where Bitcoin has continuously gone up in price since then, from 2009 from microcents up to 79,190 just the other 70,190 the other day. I think it's trading about 69,000 right now. So
yeah. Referring to the article in The Economist I mentioned earlier at the top of the show, that was from last week, and they were saying, as you said, an all-time record. Everybody, in effect, everybody who's in Bitcoin is making a profit right now as we speak. Again, it's looking very upbeat. One of the things I've also picked up on, somewhat more of a negative, sinister side, is the fact that I've heard rumors that the governments are getting into the Bitcoin movement, and they're driving up values. Again, there's kind of the conspiracy theorist narrative. But before we get onto that, Chris, again, I think the studio says we still have some issues with your sound. I think the studio may want to take another short break. Are we okay for that, studio? Do you think we'll do that? We need to get you sorted out, Chris, because I want to hear more about this. So what we'll do is we'll let you reconnect. I think they want you to reconnect. And while you're off air, me and Joe will just do a little summary. So we'll catch it. Speak soon, Steve. Chris, sorry.
All right, I'll be right back.
Yeah, Joe. I suppose you initially had more background to me. Again, I'm an old boomer. I'm way behind on this technology. My son, he's 31, 32. He's well into it. He actually has his little crypto wallet. Do you feel that maybe it's an age thing? Do you sense people of a younger generation are more inclined to go along that route? I'm speaking to friends of my age, and then they're not sure.
Well, certainly there's always the age issue, certainly with computers and technology. I mean, we're all familiar with, your grandma or grandpa not being able to operate the digital music device, but you put a dial in front of them and a switch, they can handle that no problem, because, the old radios were pretty easy to operate. You turn it on, and you adjust the needle for the radio station, and then you have another dial for your volume, right? So pretty basic. That being said, yeah, I mean, it is pretty trivial to use. It's really easy. Like we just saw Chris sent me some Bitcoin there, and it was basically instantaneous. Basically works as fast as email. You know, how long does it take for someone to receive your email? It's pretty quick, right? Pretty instantaneous. But, you know, there's really important historical issues here. Like this is actually a really, really big deal historically. Why is this digital currency always called crypto? What does that mean? That's just a system to make it secure, right? Because what do you want with gold? What was always a big deal about gold? What's the thing about money or cash in general? Well, people like to steal it, right?
Yeah.
People like to steal it because it's valuable, because it gets them things. You can buy things with. I mean, obviously, right? The money. So how do you make a digital money secure? That's the most important thing, and that actually makes it more secure than gold, because people can easily hijack gold, steal gold from you physically, right? I suppose there'd be a way to steal, like if you were kidnapped and held at gunpoint or something, you could be forced to divulge your hand over your Bitcoin, just like you could gold. But it is pretty difficult. So the idea with crypto is you need to make it secure. It needs to be secure so that nobody can steal it, so that nobody can take it over. I would really like to get Chris to discuss, you know, his knowledge on the history of currency and the history of money, because it's a good question, right? Who controls the currency? I mean, who creates it? If currency is gold, well, nobody creates that. You got to go dig it out of the ground, and then you can use it, right? And you got to refine it maybe a little bit. But with modern currency is totally fiat, right? Fiat, it's just made by decree. It's just, you know, and it's typically forced by government. Says, okay, we're all going to use this made up fiat currency. It's just, you know, printed paper basically, right? Or even digitally now, like we have digital bank accounts, and, you know, we send wire transfers. So now money transfer is digital. You know, in the traditional fiat system, right? So Bitcoin, you know, there's a question of, is it another fiat currency, or is it a bit more secure? So it is actually not quite a fiat currency, because it's actually secured by an extremely sophisticated and intelligent algorithm, which keeps it secure and makes it unhijackable so that nobody else can steal it or intercept it or take it. But I would really like to get Chris to talk about the history of currency, because think about it. If you are a group of people and you convince a government to say, hey, you have to use this made up currency that I have, I mean, that's pretty preposterous, right? So, Jhon, imagine if you had the power to go to your government, Her Majesty, or His Majesty. Yeah. And you said, hey, I have some scraps of paper that I cut up in my garage. They're all the exact same size, and I put some really pretty painting on them. I want you to use that as currency now, and I'll keep on supplying this to you. I can keep on cutting up these pieces of paper, and you can keep on using it for currency. Of course, His Majesty the King would say, you know, get out of here. I'm going to send my guys to put you in, what's the prison called, in Buckingham Palace or whatever, you know, and going to put you in prison for even suggesting such a thing, right? However, that actually happened in history, and it was done, of course, by force. So what if you had an army behind you and you could force His Majesty to use your pieces of paper as currency? You know, you forced him to do it. Well, now who has the power? Does His Majesty the King have the power? Or do you actually have the power behind the scenes, because you're forcing him to use these pieces of paper that you're just cutting up in your garage for nothing? Right?
Yeah.
So you can just cut up some pieces of paper and use them for yourself too, right? Because you're forcing His Majesty to use it for the whole country. And so you can just cut some piece of paper up for yourself. So think of how preposterous that is. It's totally preposterous, except that's what's actually happening.
Yeah, the issue here is fungibility. The technical term economists use is fungibility, the idea of preserving the inherent value of something, that it can't be like the old-fashioned clipping of the coins, silver coins back in the round. Just clip a bit off the edge, and before you know it, the coin's half the size. Right. We've got the problem solved with Chris. Chris is ready, but we're going to take a short break now. This is TNT Radio.
With his expert analysis and opinion, this is TNT Radio's Timothy Shea.
Was it something he said? Could it possibly have been something he said? I'm sure it's completely coincidental that fewer than 48 hours after New York City Mayor Eric Adams wandered off the troglodyte plantation, decrying the invasion of New York City by illegal aliens, that the top-to-bottom corrupt FBI raided not one, not two, but three of his longtime campaign aides' homes. Adams is now in trouble with the left because he had the temerity to point out that having the status of a sanctuary city hasn't worked out so well for the residents of his city. We always want to support good behavior and reward it in order to encourage more of it. So we're standing with Eric Adams on this issue, and we think that you should too. We need to stop illegal aliens from coming to our country. We need to stop paying them thousands of dollars in healthcare costs, housing costs, food costs, and educational costs. They're here, of course, to crash all those systems and to destroy America from within. Just say no to people who hate America. From MAGAInstitute.com, this is Timothy Shea for today's News Talk, TNT.
Hi, I'm Abel.
I often forget to mention that he's an amputee because Abel will try any activity he can.
My arm helps me with basically everything.
He doesn't see what he can't do, he sees what he can do.
Yeah, this is helping.
The War Amps has just given him the ability to do all the activities every kid can do.
When you donate to the War Amps, you help kids like me. Thank you.
Using science to debunk myths, from the pandemic to climate fraud. Thanks for listening to Sky Dragon Slaying on TNT Radio.
Well, we're very happy to have back in the room Chris Almida. We had a couple of gremlins in the tech issue, and we're now resolving it. Chris is back with us. Before you went off, Chris, Joe was thinking of a question to you about the history of Bitcoin, because again, I'm very vague. I'm learning. And Joe, you've got one or two questions to put onto the issue of the history.
Right. Well, it's not just the history of Bitcoin. Actually, Chris has been covering that well. It's the history of currency in general that I think people really should spend some time familiarizing themselves with. I mean, talk about one of the most important aspects of life as a human in all history is currency. What are you using to exchange goods as a medium of exchange? One book I recommend everyone pick up. I mean, first of all, if you haven't watched it, there's a great documentary by Bill Still, The Money Masters. Everyone should watch that. It's a great history of currency and how currency works. But a great book would be A History of Central Banking and the Enslavement of Mankind. It really is a force that you can use. If you control people's currency, if you control and force people to use a currency that you made up, you enslave people. You basically can enslave the world, right? So a great book, again, A History of Central Banking and the Enslavement of Mankind by Stephen Goodson. Chris, what can you tell us about the history of currency and how this feeds into the importance of Bitcoin and what Bitcoin represents as far as the freedom as opposed to the enslavement of humanity via currency?
That's a great question, Joe. I have approached the history of money really backwards, meaning that I never thought about money whatsoever. I've always been technology focused. I came into Bitcoin from the technology side. That was really what interested me. I got involved in Bitcoin because when I started to go down the rabbit hole and I realized I could participate myself, I went into it like, oh, I can host a node and I can operate a Lightning node. I can really participate in the infrastructure from the technology side. And then, of course, you start to very quickly go down that slippery rabbit hole to ask that fundamental question, like, what is money? And that's where Saifedean's book for me really was the eye opener. I didn't really have, Edward Griffin, G. Edward Griffin is someone, the Jekyll Island, that kind of, I read that very early, but didn't remember a lot about it, but just like, oh, the world is really broken and they're using fiat to control us all and we're all kind of debt slaves. That concept came across, but it didn't impact me in a big way when I approached that. Or when I was first exposed to that. in 2020, when I really started to go beyond the technical side of Bitcoin, the thing that excited me from my area of interest, and really start to go down the money side, I was shocked, honestly, how little I understood about how the economy worked, how little I understood of how money worked, and what fractional banking has done to us. I had a conversation. I actually got interviewed while I was at Bitcoin Atlantis, and one of the questions was, well, if we go move to a Bitcoin economy, how are we going to lend? The bank today, they just write numbers on a ledger, and you go to get a mortgage, for example, and someone says, oh, the house is worth $500,000, and so the bank writes $500,000 on one side of the column. Then they put your name and $500,000 on the other side of the column. So now they've invented $500,000 out of thin air just by putting an entry in a ledger. And that's really, at a very simplistic level, that's really what's happening with fiat currency today. It's imaginary. They are inventing money out of thin air in the form of debt. Every dollar that's printed comes with more debt than the dollar value that it was printed at. So we are being loaned our own money to print currency and put it into the system to be able to use. Every dollar that you receive in pay is being debased by 10% nominally every year. So that dollar, you can't even save in it because next year it's only worth 90 cents. So money is controlled by central bankers. This country was founded outside of the system of central banking. Actually, our forefathers did not want a central bank. They saw what happened to England. They saw what was happening in the old world, and they resisted. There would not be an establishment of a central bank. The central bank failed to materialize on 2 occasions, and then finally was ratified with the creation of the Federal Reserve on the 3rd occasion, and the central bankers finally won. And they've taken over the country, really. They are the ones who control, and I'm talking about America, obviously, the United States, from this perspective, the issuance of that cash as a private organization. They're not a governmental organization. They're able to act privately, and they are a consortium of bankers. That's what the Federal Reserve is. It is a consortium of bankers who are acting in their interest to control the issuance of money and to control the economy of a nation. So our money system is completely broken. There's no basis of reality for it, and it's 100% debt-based.
Yeah, I think most people still don't get it, Chris. I think a lot of people still think that central banks are the government, and they don't realize that it's never really the government at all. If anything, it's the other way around. It's 180 degrees the other way around. The government, in effect, are serving the banks. And we have this issue now where people are seeing it in the political system. They're realizing that whoever they vote for is not really relevant because there are people behind the strings pulling the strings of the puppets. So again, everything is joined up, Chris. I mean, the money system, being what it is, we're going to have to fight against it. But just for a moment, wearing your hat other than your Bitcoin hat, wearing your truth hat for a moment, because obviously you're like us, you can see what's going on in the world. Nobody wants to think about the collapse of the economy. But you made a point when we went to the break about the surge in on the internet. There's something might crash the internet or something.
No, I was talking about, one of the criticisms of Bitcoin is its energy consumption. It's a narrative that's been used to attack Bitcoin. And it's pretty, with the World Economic Forum putting out a video last week highlighting Bitcoin's use at a game reserve in Africa, which is able to a preserve, where animals can't be hunted. The game reserve is not a natural preserve. To keep the animals safe, where Bitcoin is actually being mined by that entity in order to keep them afloat financially and produce heat and allow them to produce chocolate, which they can then sell. The energy narrative on the Bitcoin side, if that's coming out from the WEF, okay, that narrative is dead. But the reality is that AI is really where energy usage is spiking. So Bitcoin uses, I think, 15 gigawatts is the estimate of how much it uses worldwide right now. They're talking about AI in 2024 needing to use 60 gigawatts and going up into over 100 gigawatts in 2025. So it's very interesting that we are pro AI across all our policies, because that coincides with the narrative where they want us to be controlled by artificial intelligence and allow that to make all our decisions for us and help us predict. I watched a really scary interview the other day where one of the primary benefactors behind Twitter, one of the funding behind X, who helped Elon Musk buy X, was talking about the role AI could play in determining through social media, determining the actual sentiment on any issue, removing the need for people to actually vote. So AI would listen to social media and decide really what it believed the consensus was and help us. So we didn't have to make those hard decisions. We didn't have to go into the details of things ourselves. We could just let AI take care of that for us. Of course, to anyone who believes in truth, anyone who believes in freedom, that's a pretty scary proposition, right? I don't want the crowd to decide what I believe about anything. I want to have my individual belief. I want to be able to make my individual vote. I want my voice to be heard as a part of that process. I don't want the crowd to decide. That's the wrong form of democracy. That's where the many are favored rather than the few. We have a republic in the United States where the many don't get to dictate and abdicate the rights of the few. Even though you may not be in the majority, you still have the right to believe what you believe, to say what you want to say, and to act in a way that, as long as it's not against the rights of someone else, in a way that you believe is correct to do. So I'm definitely a truther from that perspective. I definitely believe that. And I think the world is starting to gain consensus that, excuse my language, things are broke. I was going to say something else. I don't know if we can swear here, but things are broken, right? in a big way. And Joe, you've stated the problem well on the last couple of shows, and here as well, the problem with money. And I think more and more people are starting to understand the problem of money. Where we need to shift to is, what is the solution? That's what people need to move into. And you have a small amount of people that are starting to move and understand that Bitcoin is, on the financial side, is a solution. Maybe it's the best solution. I believe it is. A lot of other people believe it is from the financial sovereignty perspective. And right now they're looking at it as a store of value. And so we have this unprecedented change where we have institutions coming in. We've allowed these ETFs, which is kind of a Trojan horse, because you're not really holding Bitcoin. You're holding paper that says you have Bitcoin. So it's cash in, cash out. You can never have access to the actual underlying Bitcoin itself. But it is allowing that money for the first time to come into Bitcoin. And it's really starting a race, as you mentioned earlier, Jhon, about countries. Nation adoption is coming. We already have nations that are mining Bitcoin, whether they're talking about it or not. We have the UAE nations that are rumored very strongly to be coming into Bitcoin now. They're turning their oil money. They're seeing a shift happen. They're turning their infrastructure away from that so that they can sustain themselves on something beyond oil. If the world does really shift to different forms of renewable energy and oil becomes less important, if that scenario plays out in the way that the WEF and others are trying to ensure that it does, Bitcoin they're seeing Bitcoin as the solution for that. So they're starting to mine Bitcoin. The United States now has a lot of Bitcoin in its treasury. Yes, they're seizing it. They're compelling people to give up their keys as a part of criminal indictments, but they're storing a lot of Bitcoin. And maybe at some point they'll start to sell some Bitcoin. Obviously, El Salvador took on Bitcoin as its currency. There are some other nations that are rumored to do so in 2024 as well. So I think the solution that we need to focus on from that side, at least from the financial side, is Bitcoin. And the individuals and companies really need to start to prepare themselves now to be ahead of the curve. I mean, you're right there in the harbor where there's a steamship and a sailboat next to each other, right? And if you're making sails and you're making rope and you're making the kind of things that sustain the sailboat industry, you got to be looking and say, maybe I should start making paddles, or maybe I should get into coal, or maybe I should get into engine components, because that's where the future is. And I think that's really what my message is, and what I try to educate people is, we're really early, but it is happening. Adoption is happening. Start thinking about how you as a company can put Bitcoin on as an asset on your books. and how you as an individual can start to save and then eventually begin to spend and replace and participate in the Bitcoin economy as a parallel rail to the fiat economy that we're all existing in today.
Yeah, and to keep it real world, and keep it a perspective that most people can relate to, you've actually followed the digital nomad lifestyle. You've gone from the US. You talk about US values, US Constitution, but you're actually living in Europe. You're living in Portugal, sunny Portugal. Again, as an American citizen living outside of your country of origin, you've got to adapt to a culture, and adapting to a culture there that, again, it may not share your values, may not have your infrastructure. And again, that's something a lot of people are worried about. They're concerned about, where you go abroad, wherever you go to, whichever country you go to, there are pros and cons. Just give us a flavor of how you had to adapt to the foreign life there, Chris.
Sure. There's this interesting phenomenon happening worldwide where people are starting to, work under the ethos. There's a guy who's kind of coined this phrase, go where you're treated best. And that's something that really resonates with me, right? Like, I want to go where the lifestyle, where the values and the beliefs that I have exist in abundance. And I feel like that I can be in a place where I thrive. I love the United States. I served in the United States Army. I'm a patriot. I think the United States has been the best country in the world and has really led the world in a lot of ways. But I think there's a lot of problems that need to be fixed with the United States right now. And it wasn't the best environment for me personally to live in and to thrive in. So we felt that Portugal was a really great place for us. I have ties here. My family is from the Azores Islands on my father's side. So I do have some descendant ties to the Portuguese. And I found the culture here to be readily adaptable to someone from the United States. That does not mean that there are not problems. There are a lot of problems. It is very different to move from a republic, a democratic republic, to a semi-socialist country. Different to move under the rules of the EU, which I certainly am not always aligned with from a variety of perspectives. But the people around here have been very friendly to us. And they have been very open to the idea of people coming here. Now, there is starting to see some pushback. A narrative that people want to push on a popular way is that, foreigners are coming in and they're creating all the problems, right? So it's not the last 8 years of the Socialist Party that was in power that created the problems. It's the foreigners that came in the last 2 years with all their money that created the problems. Of course, that narrative is false. It's not true. We came in here under a golden visa. So we're American citizens living here under a very specific visa. We put a lot of money into the economy, not just with our investment in our homes here, but, what the money that we spend and that we make outside of Portugal. And I think for a lot of digital nomads, that's what makes it possible, is that you can make your money somewhere else and spend it in a place where you find it to be most aligned with your values or the best lifestyle for you. So you're going to see it more and more. I think more and more people are going to move to a place where they feel that they're being treated best.
Yeah, I have to say that the digital nomad visa is a real thing now. Many Far East countries have introduced the digital nomad visa. The Philippines are about to announce their new digital nomad visa. Again, you're getting beneficial treatment. You're getting the ability to come and live on favorable terms and even pay your taxes in your original country of origin. Again, the tax laws are flexible. People are, as you say, having a golden visa in Portugal, you're a net contributor to the Portuguese economy. And I think a lot of second world nations, not third world, but second world nations in the Far East are recognizing the importance of drawing in that surge of discontent, from first world nations where people again have made some money, they've got assets, but they're not getting what they think is value for money in their country of origin, and they're relocating to these second world nations that are on the up, that are building a new middle class. America, UK, Western Europe, we're seeing the demise of the middle class, Chris, and we're seeing people are voting with their feet, not just for economic reasons, but also for personal reasons. The concept of the passport bros. I've been picking up on that in recent months. A lot of American men are dissatisfied with the dating market in America, the liberal-minded feminist movements have made men very discontent. So a guy with a few bucks in the bank, with the wherewithal to live as a digital nomad, he's seeing potential in the Far East. And he's going to see Bitcoin as a good conduit to getting his life, kicking it off to a good start in those faraway places, Chris. I'm sure you agree with that.
100%. Absolutely. There's some great memes that go around from guys who had girls talk to them years ago and say, oh, you're just into that Bitcoin thing. I'm leaving. I'm done with you. Then, Bitcoin starts raising again. And it's like, hey, Jhon, are you still around? Can we chat? It's a pretty funny meme. But Bitcoin does provide that portability. It certainly makes sense from a digital nomad perspective. If you want to be able to travel with your wealth, Bitcoin is the ultimate tool to be able to do so. Moving money back and forth between countries is so unbelievably complicated, so fraught with bureaucracy. It's not as if they are actually trying to put out stumbling blocks at every possible occasion. They want you to keep your money in the currency of the nation that you earned it in, or that you live in, or that your residence is in every way possible. They don't want it to be you to move around. They don't want you to move into different countries. In reality, they don't. But of course, countries operate like companies in a free market. And so there's always going to be countries who are going to take advantage of the idea that there's discontent somewhere else. And hey, we can treat people better. We can provide them with an incentive to move to this place. In that environment, you have to be careful. You really have to, we say in Bitcoin, don't trust, verify. You really have to do your research, because we've seen a lot of countries that have put up incentives and then kind of pulled the rug after the fact, after a number of people have come in. Dubai recently, right? Dubai was a place where you paid no corporate tax. A lot of businesses moved there. Then all of a sudden they implemented a 10% tax. And they said it wouldn't be in the special economic zones. And now it is actually in the special economic zones, and it's very hard to get around of. So a lot of people that moved there put all their infrastructure there and went through what is a pretty difficult bureaucratic system in order to establish a company and operate there, are not finding it worth the value that they originally went there for. This has happened in other countries as well, even Portugal. Obviously, there was a big shift in the golden visa here. People can't get a golden visa under the same circumstances that I have, because you can't use your personal real estate as part of that investment. Of course, you could go to El Salvador. You can give them $1 million USD worth of Bitcoin, and they will give you citizenship immediately, and you could live there. But as bullish as I am on El Salvador as a Bitcoin country, there are things to be cautious about, right? That president is in his second term. He can't have a third term. Is that change sustained only by his efforts? Will something shift after the fact? I think you really have to do your due diligence, think about what your individual circumstance are, and do the thing that's most aligned for your particular situation.
Yeah, there's a whole raft of issues to consider when you're thinking about your future, with your family's future. I know you've got a young family, Chris. My children have grown. Joe's got a young family. Again, the tendency is to play safe. I mean, most of us want to play safe and put our family first and not take undue risks. And from my own perspective, Chris, I mean, the way I would approach it is to dip my toe in the water with the Bitcoin thing. As you rightly admitted, it's emerging, it's new. There's a lot of work to happen yet. I mean, as we said earlier, back in 2009 was the first proper transaction in Bitcoin. 15 years on, it's still growing. There are still issues to be sorted out. Government regulation, for example. The predecessor to Bitcoin, I believe, was e-gold, and that fell foul of regulators. Again, that was tarnished with criminality. People were using it for undue criminal reasons. Again, it's another thing touted by certain elements in government. They don't like the hidden aspect of it, Chris. They don't like the fact that we as libertarians, if you like, and again, you'll probably agree, most cryptocurrency experts have this kind of libertarian mindset. They're nerdy. They like to be left on their own, independent-minded. It's a bit of a war, isn't it, between those who believe in the individuality and those who believe in the group mindset. The group mindset, for the benefit of all. It's a tug of war, isn't it?
100% it is. So we have to remain vigilant. We have to remain active. We have to ensure that our voices are heard, and we have to insist on our right to have self-custody of our own finances. That's where they're going to try and block us. They're going to try and block us the on-ramps, the off-ramps to the fiat currencies, or from the fiat currencies to Bitcoin. And they're going to try and block us from holding our Bitcoin ourselves. They're going to want to push it into their existing system. And you don't change things by changing the existing system. You change things by creating a new system and let everyone migrate to that, because it's simply better. And that's the opportunity we have with Bitcoin. That's the solution. And that's how we hold the line.
Yeah, well said. One more minute, under a minute to go, Chris. Give us some links. Where can we go to find out more? You know, you're our guru at the moment. Give us a heads up on that.
Sure. So you can find me at Life on BTC at lifeonbtc.substack.com. That's my blog. I do a lot of how-to and DIY and that kind of stuff there. And of course, resources and opinions about what's happening in Bitcoin. Also Life on BTC on X, Life on _BTC. That's on Twitter. And that's where a lot of the Bitcoin community is. And I will put up, I have it almost done in anticipation of today's show, didn't make it, but I'm going to put up a whole resources page there for anybody who wants to come, how to start with Bitcoin, how to get started. And so that'll all be there in the next day or so. You can go there and get everything you need.
Chris Almida, pleasure talking to you again. Have a great weekend. This is Sky Dragon Slaying on TNT Radio.
Thanks so much, guys.